Hey, everyone. Today on Todd's podcast, our guest is Ed Kendrick, and we're going to talk to Ed about what he did to build a church, his family's commitment to making that happen, not just Ed, but his wife and child, what they went through, how they developed the church, how they have grown the church into a 2,500 plus member congregation, some of the things they do in our community through counseling and the youth program. So I think if you ever want to know how do you build a church, what are some of the things you go through, Ed gives us a step-by-step trip down memory lane on how he did that. So I hope you'll enjoy today's episode of Todd's podcast with Ed Kendrick. Hey, welcome back to Todd's podcast, everyone. We have a wonderful show for you today. It is a little different subject matter than we've talked about, and I know you're going to enjoy it because we've got a great guest and a great topic. Our guest is Ed Kendrick. He is the lead pastor with Heartland Church in Winter Haven. He began the church and founded it in 2002 after graduating that same year from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary with his master's degree in divinity. And then in 2015, Ed completed his Doctor of Ministry degree also from Southeastern Seminary. Prior to attending seminary and starting Heartland Church, Ed spent 20 years as a bank executive and served in various civic positions, including mayor of the city of Fort Meade. And I want to ask you a question or two about your life in politics, because I had a short stint there too. Through Ed's leadership, Heartland has grown from just 14 people when they started in 2002. Now they have a little bit over 2,500. That number may change, maybe a few more since I pulled this off. 2,500 people who call Heartland Church home today. His true passion is to see people come to know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior and to grow in their relationship with Him until they themselves are reaching others for Christ. Ed has been married to his wife, Nancy, since 1978. They have one daughter, Lauren, and two grandchildren, Colton and Mackenzie. Ed's hobbies include fishing, as is my son. If you can catch fish, I may have to buy you a tank of gas and you can take him fishing to teach him how to catch, woodworking, and spending some time in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina. So, Ed, I'm glad you're here. Ed's life verse is Colossians 1:17. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So how did I do, Ed? Was that all right?
You did great.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being here. Looking forward to having some fun, talking to you about your journey through life and how you came about to start a church. That was what really interested me, is how you did all that. So,
yeah. Well, it was a kind of an interesting story, even for me. You know, I was a banker for 20 years and involved in the community, and things were going well, but I was a devout Christian. I was real involved in my church, and I don't really remember exactly how everything happened, but I just started feeling this pull, a calling into ministry, and just started exploring that a little bit, and wound up deciding to go to seminary. And so I resigned my position at the bank and went to seminary, went to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in North Carolina, and went there and just didn't really know what I was going to do, to be perfectly honest with you. I just went to seminary, thought I'll get this education and then see where God leads. And while I was there were some guys from the Florida Baptist Convention, which we're a Southern Baptist church by denomination, and there were some guys there from the Southern Baptist Convention, and they were looking for people to plant churches in Florida. And I just walked over to them in the Student Center to say hello, and they grabbed me and started talking to me about planting a church in Florida. They gave me a map, showed me a map with some stars on it that had locations where they would like to start churches, and lo and behold, there were 2 stars in Winter Haven, Florida. It's my hometown.
Right.
So I decided to plant a church, and that's how I got started. And
so were you a Winter Haven boy? Did you grow up in Winter Haven and born there?
Well, actually, I was born in Bartow.
Okay.
And but I lived sort of on the line where the school board district line was drawn. Okay. And so in the junior high, I went 1 year to middle school or junior high school in Bartow.
Okay.
And then it shifted over, and the rest of my education was in Winter Haven. So I graduated from Winter Haven High School.
So if you slept in one bedroom one night, you were a Bartow student. If you slept in the other bedroom, you got to go to Winter Haven?
Yeah, it was crazy. The kids across the street from me literally graduated from a different high school than I did.
Wow. How old were you when you said, I want to go to seminary?
Well, I'd been a banker for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I was 43 years old.
Okay.
So I went to seminary at 43, graduated, I was 46.
So when you sat down with your wife and said, hey, honey,
there's not enough time on the podcast.
This is what I want to do. Was her first reaction was, you want to do what? Or how did she take that?
She really, in the beginning, didn't want to hear it. We had a pretty comfortable life. Yeah. I was a senior vice president of the bank. I'd been there for, in the banking industry for 20 years.
Right, I remember.
I had a great job, a good career ahead of me. And all of a sudden I'm saying I want to, sort of do away with all of that and move in a completely different direction, sort of start over at 43 years of age. She wasn't happy with it to begin with. And that's a long story, but I'll tell you one quick interesting story. So we're going through all of this, and I'm telling her I really feel like God is calling me to do this. She's not interested at all. We only have one child. We have a daughter, Lauren, and Lauren was in middle school, and she's not liking this at all. So every day I'd come home to mom and daughter crying, and so one day I'm in my office at the bank, and Nancy at the time, my wife at the time, was the executive director of the Fort Meade Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And so one day she just calls me in my office and just unloads on me. I mean, the crying was a different kind of crying, and she was mad and angry and telling me why I was ruining our life and all of this. I hung up the phone from that conversation and literally said a little prayer. And I just said, God, if you're calling me to do this, you're calling my family, you're calling my wife, and you've got to help me out here. And so I went home that day and went in my office at our house. And I was a Sunday school teacher, so I was in there preparing my Sunday school lesson. And the door flies open in my office, and I'm thinking, oh, here goes round two. And instead, my wife looked at me and she said, what did you do? And I said, what do you mean? She said, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. She said, well, I don't know what's happened, but I can't be mad. I can't be angry anymore. Wow. And I told her, I said, well, I just prayed after you called me. And from that moment on, she was supportive. And when we left for seminary, we were excited about going. We went, and everything turned out great.
You can't do it by yourself. You could never have done that by yourself. And the fact that some switch went off through prayer, it seemed to say, okay, this is our life together. We're going to make it work. And I think it's a testament and a testimony to her and her will as much as yours and being called. Is you can't do this without if you have a family, you can't do this without it being a family unit moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's impossible. You need each other. And I can tell you this, that when you leave everything, remember, I'd been at the bank for a long time.
Right.
I had a pretty good income. I had, we had just built a new home, and things were moving.
In Fort Meade?
Down in Fort Meade. Things were moving along, at a good pace and in a good direction.
You'd already been mayor.
I'd already been mayor.
The springboard to governor or presidency, being mayor of Fort Meade.
Perhaps that drove me to become a pastor. I don't know. but she just, you can't do it alone. You need somebody with you. And there were many times as we were going through seminary even, I was 43 years old. I hadn't been to school in a long time.
Yeah.
And in seminary, there is an extraordinary amount of reading and writing. And there were times where during that I wanted to just sort of give up. And, she would keep me going. And then there were times when she would get a little homesick and I would have to kind of push her. But working together, it worked out.
Were you a good student in high school and to get your undergraduate degree, or going back as an adult is a different mindset. I've gotten adult education in real estate, but they're courses. It's not a career change. And like you said, you hadn't been to school in a long time. You have to think different, and you've got to balance family and children and all the other stuff that goes with it.
It was different. In high school, I was an average student, not because there was divorced family and some things going on there. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of an average student. I didn't have a lot of supervision. And still, made it through. Then I went into the Navy, actually, right out of high school, spent 5 years in the United States Navy. And then while I was in the Navy, started going to college, taking college courses.
Right.
Got out, finished my degree at Warner University, which was Warner Southern College at the time.
Right.
And then worked at the bank, and I got my bachelor's degree, and I worked at the bank for years. And then, of course, going to seminary to get a master's in divinity degree at 43. It was definitely a step back into learning how to write again and learning how to study again. And now I'm managing a family and trying to work in addition to going to school. It was tough.
Yeah. I want to keep talking about it, but I have a question, and I may know the answer, but what's the difference between a pastor and a preacher? Because I didn't know if it was a denominational thing. I know that I've called our preacher a pastor. I've called him a preacher. I just did it again. And I think it's interchangeable to some degree, but how do you view the difference in the roles of being a pastor and a preacher?
Well, I think that, I think people do use them interchangeably, and, just in some denominations, people lean into one or the other.
Right.
I think they're two different things in reality. I mean, I'm the pastor of Heartland Church. I'm the lead pastor of Heartland Church. I'm also the preacher there. So the preacher is that person that stands up and proclaims the word of God and does the preaching, and the pastor is you're leading the church.
You're the CEO of the church.
You're the CEO and also you're taking care of your flocks. Those folks, and watching them. Over them when they're in the hospital, and you're doing this pastoral ministry.
I think it's a different. You have a different type of mindset.
Yeah.
And do you get offended if someone calls you one or the other? I don't think anyone necessarily means anything ill about it. Like I just didn't understand it till I'd researched it. Yeah. And it's like, no, a pastor also preaches, but a preacher may not also pastor.
Yeah. And I think that, the pastor title is a little more inclusive. Like it's sort of an overarching thing. People at church that, we're pretty informal about those things, and a lot of people just call me Ed, but a lot of people call me Pastor Ed.
Right.
No, and then there's a few people, and it depends on sort of how they grew up and where they come from. They just don't call me Pastor or Ed; they just call me preacher. Yeah. So,
well, Steve Negley is my preacher. Mm-hmm. I just said it.
Yep.
And I refer to him as, the preacher of my church.
Right.
And until now, it's like, I've got to do a better job, as he's the leader of our church. He's the CEO, and he makes sure that, everything runs and everything works. And Sundays he gets to preach, but the rest of the time it's a full-time job that, the preaching's you got to enjoy the preaching part if you're going to be a pastor, I would think. Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts, but I think a lot of it has to do where you come from, how you grew up, and those kind of things. But people call me both, and it doesn't really matter to me.
So when you went back to seminary, did you say, I want to lead a church, or did you just say, I want to preach, or wherever God takes me on this journey, I'm dragging my family along with me, and apparently they're siding with you at that particular time? Well,
I think that I had in my mind that I wanted to preach. I think I was a Sunday school teacher. I had some success in that, and I really enjoyed it, and I felt like that was something that God just sort of called me to. So I felt like preaching was a thing. But then when I went to seminary, I actually focused on counseling. So I got interested. I took a couple courses, and I just loved those courses. So I actually did my master's in divinity in counseling.
Okay.
And that was, so I didn't take as many preaching classes as guys that weren't focused in that area, and yet I ended up starting a church instead of being a counselor.
So in seminary, there's actually courses to teach you how to preach and to write sermons. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just, you're either a natural at it or you're not. You have to learn a formal education on that.
Oh yeah, there's you learn how to, it's called exegeting passages of scripture. You learn how to go in and can look at it contextually and do word studies. You take Greek and Hebrew and all those things, and you learn how to, you take just enough to be dangerous really, but you learn how to do those things, and so that you can interpret passages, and then, then obviously your style, the way you come across and all that, some of that's natural. I mean, you're created a certain way, and and have a certain personality. And some people are gifted in that, some aren't, that kind of thing.
Did you want to start a church, or did you, I mean, you said there's 2 stars in Winter Haven, and that's how you kind of picked it. Did you think it'd be a lot easier if I just came in and was an associate pastor and moved up to lead pastor? Or did you say, I want the challenge of building something?
That's kind of interesting, because I really didn't know what to expect. When I just sort of said, okay, I feel called, God, here I am, I'm going, do with me whatever you want to do. And then I get there, and I really did not know anything about planting a church.
Right.
I never really had heard the term, I don't think ever, church planter. And
they don't teach that in seminary?
When I got to seminary, this was before. So when I get to seminary, all of a sudden I start hearing about these guys going to plant churches. And then I ran into those guys from Florida Baptist Convention and ended up taking some church planting courses. And it was right up my alley, because before, when I was a banker, in addition to that, I had developed some, I partnered with a builder and a real estate guy and bought some land, me and another guy, and we developed some homes. We had a mini blind and vertical blind, an installation business. I was always like this little entrepreneur on the side. So this idea of starting something resonated with me.
Yeah, it's got to have the entrepreneurial spirit in you to do that.
Yeah.
To start something like that. So you come back, what's the first thing you do and say, okay, God, what's next? What was the first thing you did when it was time to start?
Well, to start Heartland, to start church. Well, actually, it started while I was in seminary. I was taking those classes, and I started taking some, as electives, I was taking church planning classes. And then I decided, I just prayed about it, decided that, you know what, I'm going to plant a church. I'm going to start a new church. So I decided, I got the map with the stars on it.
Right.
And so decided it was going to be Winter Haven. So I started in our denomination, you need a sponsoring church. And so we started looking for a sponsoring church, and it's another story, but Calvary Baptist Church in Winter Haven became our sponsoring church. And I created a newsletter and started sending a newsletter out. Back in those days, it was a little different than it is now. Mailing it out. I was mailing it out to everyone that I knew and just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm coming to Winter Haven. I'm going to be starting a church. Would love for you to, pray for us, support us in any way that you can. We'd love for you to show up when we get there. And so I sort of started it before I hit the ground. And then I came to Winter Haven in May of 2002, and we had our first service at it was then the Admiral's Inn what was Cypress Gardens, which is now Legoland.
Well, if that place didn't need a little churching in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And but
it needed to sanitize it.
Yeah. Yeah. But the guy that was running it at the time was a Christian, and he was part of a church plant over in Haines City. So he helped us, gave us some good rates on some rooms to use as Sunday school rooms and things. And so we just came back and started the church and advertised, told everyone that we knew. And the first Sunday we had a service was in July of 2002, which would be 24 years in a month or so. Yeah. And we had 83 people show up.
Wow, your first service.
First service. And then the following week we had 30. And we were moving in the right direction. And but that 30 people sort of became the nucleus.
Right.
We had earlier, you mentioned when you were reading my bio, we had 14 people.
Right.
As I was sending out the newsletters and I would come home, there were a group of about 14 of us that would get together and talk about it, and they all came and helped me start the church.
So they helped you.
Yeah.
I know there's more energy when I'm speaking in front of a big group of people than 20 or 30. It's got to be more energizing, more exciting for you to deliver your message to a full church than 8 or 10 people. Hey everybody, if you're looking to purchase a new or pre-owned vehicle from a dealership that makes the process easy, straightforward, and actually enjoyable, you need to check out the Chevrolet Center in Winter Haven, Florida. Located at the corner of Cypress Gardens Boulevard and 1st Street, they've been family owned and operated since 1958, serving our community with top-notch customer satisfaction ever since. My family and I bought several vehicles from the Chevrolet Center, and I am confident they will earn your trust as well. Stop by and say hello to their friendly staff at 101 Cypress Gardens Boulevard in Winter Haven and tell them Todd's podcast sent you. So after you left the Admiral's Inn, where did you go next? And I want to get to your progression of where you ended up with now in downtown Winter Haven.
We started at the Admiral's Inn. We were there for about a year.
Okay.
And each week we had to set up all of our equipment, tear down all of our equipment. It was really, it was a lot of work. And one day, it was around Easter, someone came to me and said, "Hey, Ed, there's a commercial complex that actually John Wood, they owned it. It was down off Cypress Gardens Road," and said a church had been in one of their buildings and the church had moved. And so we decided, well, there's a possibility that we could rent that space and then we wouldn't have to set up and tear down. It's a little larger space and it's something that's more permanent, not quite so temporary. And so we did rent that building. And so we moved there. And then there we ended up renting like 5 or 6 buildings from them as we grew.
Right.
And we grew to about 400 people.
On that little campus or little complex they were in?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And we were having multiple services. We had a Saturday night services, I think at one time 3 on Sunday or 2 or 3 on Sunday. And so we were growing. And then while we were there, we had the largest attended Sunday we'd ever had. We had 576 people on a Easter Sunday.
Wow.
And that was incredible. And then we just sort of reached this point where we weren't really growing. We had multiple services. We were packed in there. The air conditioning units could not handle the amount of people. So we had people during church standing out at the air conditioning with water hoses on them, trying to keep them cool. And it was something.
A different kind of baptism.
A different kind of baptism, yeah. And then one day we heard that up in by Gold's Gym, what was Gold's Gym, it's now, what is it? Move.org.
Yeah, it was something. Move Gym.
But there was a building that had been an old Eckerd drugstore.
Yep, I remember that.
And so we rented that building and we moved 1/2 mile up from where we were to that building. 1/2 mile, about 400 people average attendance on a Sunday. The third week we were in that building, 880 people showed up for church. And we weren't prepared. We didn't have enough children's workers. We didn't have enough seats.
Right.
It was a crazy period of time. But then it sort of dwindled down to about 700, and then it's never got below that again. And we stayed there for a number of years. And we were, once a year, we were having multiple services. And so once a year, we would try to get our entire congregation together. So we would rent what used to be called Noramea Hall.
Yeah.
We would rent Noramea Hall, and we would have a Sunday where we called it Heartland United, and we would get all of our we had a couple other campuses too. So we'd get all these people together and we'd worship together.
Right.
And so I had one of those, and I cast a vision for what we saw in the future, what we would like to see, and we needed new facilities, and we needed this. Well, we had some guys from Winter Haven that was part of the 610 organization that were in the congregation, and they had this facility, which was a government subsidized daycare at the time, and that was about to close, and they were going to just tear the building down.
And I think it was an old Safeway or Thriftway back when I was a kid. You probably remember it.
It was an A&P.
A&P, all right.
And here's a neat part of the story. My mother was divorced, single mom, and she was a cashier in that A&P.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so now our church is located there. So they came to us, 610 came to us and said, "Hey, we have this possible opportunity. You would not need the parking when we need the parking during the week, and we don't need it on the weekends. And, we're a capital investment group, so we can generate income from a lease. It's better than tearing the building down just for parking." So we, through a series of meetings and over a course of a year, we came to an agreement, and they let us design the building. They built the building. And then we moved into our current location, and we leased the building on a long-term lease.
Right.
And then later, just through some things that were happening with 610, I kept going to them, and I graduated from high school with Bud Strang, and Steve Calgarides went to high school with him, and I knew Hap Hazelwood, who was their financial guy at the time. Yep. We had been in banking together, and so I knew all these guys, and And just through a series of events, we kept asking, can we buy the building? And they said, no, we don't. We're not in the business of selling buildings. And then they were moving around and some things were happening. Some banks merged. I think that had some things to do with it. And I went back to them and they came back and said, we are interested in selling the building. And so we ended up buying the building from them.
I think some of the discussion I remember is as they were kind of having their vision for Winter Haven, they also wanted a thriving church in downtown Winter Haven. They thought that was important for the rest of their, downtown campus. I think the stars really aligned for you to be there. And I think they built a beautiful building for you. Now you own a beautiful building down there.
Yes. And that was part of their plan. And, if you have a church downtown, and it's a pretty good sized church. So you've got a couple thousand people on the weekends. You got people coming in and out of those services. Well, that feeds restaurants and those kind of things downtown. And also, again, there's always a little parking issue downtown. And so when during the week, when we're not there, I mean, we use some of the parking places, but it gives them a couple of
Absolutely.
Parking
a lot
lots.
of people park there. And I know you're not finished building the church, but as you've gone through it, what are some of the things you say, I wish we hadn't done that, or maybe a little less of that or maybe a little more of that, not necessarily what were your mistakes, but, part of what I'll talk about is how you build it and what did you do right and what did you do wrong, and not necessarily wrong, but what would you do different?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, I think the initial building when we first moved in, it was great. It worked perfectly, but we grew pretty rapidly.
Correct.
After we built the building. And one of the things is we sort of pushed ourselves out of administrative space, for offices and those kind of things. But fortunately, right after we moved in, a couple of years after we moved in, across the street
I sold
from
that
the
building
church,
to y'all.
You sure did.
I did.
And you sold that building. We bought that building and
Yep.
turned that into our administrative offices.
Yeah. And I was so glad that you got it because there was someone else bidding on it, and it was, the seller said, I'd like for the church to have this. So it was able to work out well for you and work out for the seller as well.
It did. It really worked. It has worked out great for us. And then, then we didn't expect at that time that one day we, in addition to all the other things we were doing, we would have a counseling center.
Right.
And so we started a counseling center. So we had to lease some space across the street in Old Town Square. And we leased that space for a while. And the counseling center grew at a lot more rapid pace than we expected. And so we grew, and then we eventually moved that, which it's now in the Wells Fargo Bank building on the top floor.
Right.
We rent that up there. And so we, I guess if there's something we wish we would have done differently, perhaps put a second story on that building when we moved in. Because going out to these other places and leasing space isn't cheap.
Right.
And it would have helped.
It's not efficient either.
It's not efficient, yeah.
If you can hear the thunder in the background, I don't know if you can hear it over the microphones, but we have a rainstorm, but we'll just think it's God's approving what you're talking about right now.
That's it.
I thought it was the AC, then it's like, no, there's a storm going on. So when you're building a congregation, you've got to convince, I'm assuming, your congregants, you've got to convince your folks that are your financial guys and gals and everyone, this is a long-term thing. I'm not in this just to do something short-term. What was your message to them? How did you get them to buy into your vision, your Nancy's vision about your ministry, how you wanted the path for growth and that kind of stuff?
Well, I think one thing you have to do is you have to consistently and regularly cast your vision. And you have to tell people, you just have to tell them you're going to be there.
And that goes with any entrepreneur. I mean, not to bring it back to that, if you're building a business, you got to make sure these people think, hey, he's going to be there to fix my car when it breaks down in 9 months. He or she has got a long-term vision for this and a plan.
And if anyone is familiar with church planting, there are guys that plant churches that's their calling. They feel like they go in and they start the church, they get some people come in, and the church can now financially support itself, and they move on to the next place to plant another church. And there were some questions about that in the beginning, but we just had to assure people that, no, we're here to stick it out. We're here for the long haul. We want to grow the church, and and then we just kept casting the vision, and people kept coming, and it's grown to be what it is today.
What's your your church board look like? Do you have deacons and elders?
Yeah.
What are their functions? Is it kind of a traditional Baptist church type setup?
Yeah. Well, it's recently changed. That's interesting. Okay. So when we started,
that was Eli's question. He's really smart, just so you know.
Well, when we originally started the church, I guess you would call us a staff-led church. So it's basically pastor-led, and then our ordained staff members were sort of functioned as our board, whatever you want to call that board, our elders, whatever you want to call it. And so for years, that's how the church was governed.
And that was their job. That was their paid job, right?
Well, our staff was like our student pastor, all those ordained pastors just basically served as elders, if you will. But really, it was a staff-led church, more of a pastor-led church. I was the planter. I just sort of called the shots for a long time. But, the church is getting a lot larger. The decisions that we're making are a lot larger. The financial decisions are a lot larger. Right. There's a lot more income. There's a lot of stuff, a lot more people. There's a counseling center. Now there are different kinds of liabilities than you've had in the past. There's all kind of things that are there. And so a few years back, it's probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we started having some discussions about, and I felt like that, we really need to have a board so we instituted elders it's been about probably 3 years ago now. Mm-hmm. So we have an elder board now, and we changed our bylaws, and we have an elder board. We have a group of people that there's lay elders, and then there are right now there are 2 vocational elders, which would be myself and my executive pastor. And then the rest are lay. There's 5 lay elders right now.
How was that change in your structure accepted in the church? Was it something you spent some time promoting, selling, convincing this is the right way to go? Or it's like, hey, this is where we're going? And, was it a big controversial thing for y'all?
It wasn't controversial at all.
Good.
At all. Actually, most of the people, I think, felt like it was a pretty good idea. It provides a lot of different things. It provides some accountability for the people that are leading. It also gives you, when you go reach out into your congregation, into these lay elders. I mean, most of my lay elders are people that a lot of them have businesses and different things. And so you bring a lot of knowledge, you bring a lot of expertise, into the room. We do our very best to make sure these are good, godly men. And so, hopefully they are, but they've done a remarkable job. It's been great for me. I think it's taken really quite a bit of pressure off of me in a lot of regards. It's great to go into a room and have a meeting and throw out ideas and to have the feedback, and they're very supportive and those kind of things.
Is preaching still one of your favorite things to do, or is it more on the counseling side? Since you kind of have a background in counseling, but I think you enjoy presenting, preaching, giving the word of God, and from the stage.
My primary role is that now. I mean, the church has grown. We have 8 pastors on staff,
right?
And so my primary role is preaching, and it's the thing I enjoy the most now. We have a counseling center now. We have, I think we have 3 maybe licensed clinical psychologists. We have a number of counselors, licensed counselors. So we have a pretty good sized counseling center. So I don't do near as much counseling. Now there's still pastoral counseling, but it's if something's long term, we sort of shift them over to the counseling center.
I think it seems there's a shortage of counselors, and I think the fact that your church is filling that void is wonderful. Do y'all do all kinds of counseling? Do you do it for children? Do you do it is it marriage counseling? Is it grief counseling? Is it you don't care what kind? If someone needs to talk, you got someone there that can listen? And
all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah. We have people that specialize in different things that are there. And they take insurances, all different kinds of insurances, and they are just booked. It's amazing. They're like 2 or 3 months out,
right?
Most of the time. Like you said, there aren't enough counselors.
Yeah. Is that something that you're continuing to grow, or you say, hey, we're about as big as we can be, or if we can find 3 more counselors, we'll find some space for them because we have a demand for that in our community?
I think it's we've sort of allowed organic growth. If we see it pushing limits, we look, for other people. But quite frankly, the counseling center's successful enough, done a good enough job, has enough clients now that we have people coming to us asking for jobs.
Wow.
We work with Southeastern University here in Lakeland,
right.
and we use interns from there. And so, it's just sort of organically grows.
Todd's podcast is sponsored in part by Saunders Real Estate, your trusted partner in land and commercial real estate since 1996. With over 125 expert advisors located throughout the Southeast United States, the full-service brokerage specializes in a wide range of property types from farms and ranches to commercial buildings and development land. If you're looking to build your legacy with a confident investment, please visit SaundersRealEstate.com or call 877-518-5263 to connect with an advisor today. So I've been to your church a few times. I've been to weddings, funerals, christenings, baptisms. What kind of music do y'all have? I know the answer, but I want you to tell us what kind of music you have.
Well,
because it's different than the Presbyterian church that I go to.
Well, our church is a non-traditional Southern Baptist church, and
Correct.
when I say non-traditional, we have a band.
Yeah.
We don't have a choir.
A very good band.
Yeah, a good band, good talented musicians,
Yes.
talented vocalists. And so we do more contemporary, mostly, Christian music.
Right.
We still do hymns and those kind of things. We integrate those into what we're doing, but it's more of a contemporary style of worship.
I can assure you, if you like that type of music, you need to go to Heartland and go to see Ed's church, because they do have phenomenal music, phenomenal sound. Our church, when we decided to get into contemporary, I think we have a snare drum and a cymbal and, amplified microphones for a couple of young ladies to sing. So It is a different setup and a different type of church. But, the music, I think, is a huge part of your ministry, and that has drawn a lot of folks to your church, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it has. Back when we started the church, I know you think now we're 24 years old. Yeah. So
You're not a baby anymore.
No, think 24 years ago, and we started with this style. And one of the things that actually the Florida Baptist Convention approached me about is they said, we don't want you to plant a traditional Southern Baptist church. We have a lot of families, a lot of young families
right.
that we feel like would be drawn to a more non-traditional style of worship. They would like more contemporary music and those kind of things, more casual attire, those kind of things. So we started the church with that in mind, that this is what we want to be. We want to be solid theologically. We want that to be solid. I'm very conservative. We want that to be, but we want the service style to reach these young families. And I think that it has.
What kind of music do you like to listen to that's not church music when you're either in the car? I know now you listen to Todd's podcast every time you get in.
Yeah, that's right.
But what kind of music do you rock out to? I know how old you are now.
I'm a drummer, and I don't really play anymore. But back in the day, I was actually, when I was in high school, I was the stage band drummer for Winter Haven High School, and then after high school, I played in nightclubs. I played band. I actually met my wife. She was singing in a band, and I was playing drums, and
Nice.
that's how we met. So she's a really good vocalist, and when I'm not, I do listen to Christian music.
Yeah.
I'm a big country music fan, and I also like Southern rock. So people that know me, have known me for years and years, they know I'm a big Leonard Skinner fan.
Yeah.
So those guys.
But who from the South isn't?
Yeah,
But who
right.
from
You're
the
right.
South
You're
isn't?
right.
Shifting gears a little bit, I want to expand this out of Polk County, and what's your feeling on the state of Christianity in the world today, or in the United States today? It's kind of a left field question, but I've got you here. You're a theologian and a very smart person and thoughtful. It seems like the country was kind of on the decline religion-wise a few years ago. Seems like we're making a little bit of a rebound. What's your kind of gut feeling of what you see?
Well, I think the answer depends on what we're measuring. If you're looking at just cultural Christianity at large, it's declined. I think we can say that. There's a lot of a lot of surveys have been done. There's a lot of stuff out there, and there may be fewer people attending church, that kind of thing. We're seeing that decline. Fewer people identify as Christians simply because they were raised that way. A lot of people were raised maybe in a Christian home, but they don't identify as Christians anymore. But if you're measuring committed Christians who are actively, in church, they're pursuing their faith, then we're seeing a lot of engagement there. I think so. There are two different things. There's less casual, I guess, commitment and more desire for authenticity is the way I would put it. And we're seeing a divide, if you will, between nominal Christianity and genuine discipleship. From
what is nominal Christianity? I don't know that.
People that just sort of are on the fringes of Christianity. People that they may go to church once in a while. Yeah, I'm a Christian, but really they don't live their faith. It's just nominal Christianity. Just sort of out there. We're seeing less cultural Christianity and more intentional Christianity, I think, today. It's a really difficult landscape to navigate in Christianity today. I mean,
Do you think there's more distractions out there right now to pull people's minds and their hearts and their souls away from it? Or has there always been all these different distractions and now you just see more of them because they're on your telephone and on your iPad as opposed to TV?
I think that, maybe some of them are more noticeable today, but I think there are more distractions today. I mean, I think, matter of fact, I think, quite frankly, that distraction's probably one of the biggest issues that we face in Christianity. There's so many things to pull you in different ways. We live in a culture that's, today, that it's filled with a lot of noise. And there's a lot of busyness. There are a lot of things. There's so much entertainment. Then you have the internet, and you have social media. You just got so many things that are just sending so many messages to you. There's a lot of distraction, and I think that's a big problem. I think that's a bigger problem than just an assault on Christianity, if you will. Right. I mean, I think sometimes it feels like there's an assault on Christianity, but I think the bigger problem is just distraction. Yeah, there is an assault on Christianity. I mean, if you think about what Christianity is, I mean, the fact that, we're talking about Christ, and we're talking about that putting your faith and trust in Christ is the way to get to heaven and the way your sins are forgiven. If you talk about those theological things, there's always been an assault on Christianity because Satan, the enemy, doesn't want those things to move forward, right? And but I think the distraction, and now obviously he, as the enemy, creates a lot of those distractions, but I think it's the distractions that are a really big problem.
You mentioned social media. What is your thought on the rise of social media? I mean, you touched on a little bit, and maybe some of the celebrity culture surrounding some of these things, the celebrity culture of preachers, of having these big TV preachers and healing, the Ernest Angeles and the other guys that were more entertainment, it seems like, than other. You got any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I think that, I think in any area of life when we're talking about this whole social media thing, and I think that is, there are positives and there are negatives. I mean, social media has caused a lot of problems in what I do. It causes a lot of problems because I have people that come to church, and I do my very best, like hopefully pastors do. You do your very best to teach them what God's word says, how to live their lives for Christ, and to grow and those kind of things, and to have hope. You try to teach them that. But then, the same people used to, you would teach them that, and, you were their primary source of information, and they would come to you. And now, they walk outside church, and they leave church, and 30 minutes later, they're watching 44 other pastors. Right. And they can be and here's the problem is very often they don't know anything about those people. Right. But they're listening to them. And so they get bits and pieces of different kinds of theology, and then they sort of pull all that together and they form their theology, which sometimes can be a little wacky. Right. And so I think it causes problems in that regard. And everybody's got a voice And some people don't know how to filter through all of that.
Right.
They just latch onto things. Then the good part of that is that because of these things, we have an opportunity, just like we're having this conversation right now. I mean, we have the opportunity to influence people in a much greater capacity than we ever had in the past. I mean, we broadcast our services and on the web, and we get comments every week from Germany and South Africa.
Wow.
and somebody in Minnesota.
So your Greek and Latin that you learned many years ago in seminary is paying off.
Yeah. But it's amazing because I literally one week I was in, this is a long time ago, it's been quite a few years ago now, but I was in church one week and I walked over and there was a couple, I did not know them. And, I don't know everybody, it's a large church, but they saw me and, they said, excuse me. And I said, yeah, hello. And didn't know who they were. They introduced themselves and they were like German.
Wow.
And we watch you, and they're in the United States and they wanted to come visit the church. That just blows your mind that can happen. That's the positive side. Right. We have the opportunity to share the message of Christianity, the gospel with the world in a way we never have. But at the same time, that means anybody can do that.
Yeah.
And so
I remember when cell phones were exploding and people were bringing their iPads to church and they're looking at them going, why aren't they paying attention? And then it's like, but they're reading the passages with you. They're just reading it on their version rather than the hard copy of the Bible. They're reading their Bible on their pad. And it's like, okay, stop judging. And I have found myself from time to time looking at my phone. Either I'm bored or I'm trying to get some references to whatever, Dr. Nagley's saying or whatever. And so you're right. There's certainly a positive and negative with them.
Oh yeah. I think it's both. And it's something that's not going to go away, and we have to learn how to navigate this landscape. I mean, it's tough, and but I like to focus on the positive things. I mean, we use social media a lot in our church, and we've reached a lot of people. We've had a lot of people come to our church because of our social media outreach. So.
Do you think in the U.S. religious community is making a comeback? Are we on an upward trend or declining trend? We talked about it a few minutes ago. Is how do you measure it? And it's kind of got to be, you kind of got to measure numbers, whether it's fannies in the pew, whether it is people that say they're religious or not. I mean, you think we're kind of over the hump a little bit, or you think we still have headwinds?
I think
there'll always be headwinds.
Yeah,
there'll always be something.
Well, I think that a couple of things are happening. I think, like, if you look at long-term trends, they show a decline in religious affiliation. I mean, if you look out there, you're seeing a lot of those things. More Americans identify today as having no religious affiliation than in previous generations. I mean, the research. That's sad. That is sad. That's what I see. Church attendance over the last number of years has declined some, and I know in our denomination we see a lot of churches closing. Right. We see fewer baptisms than we have in previous years, in some regards. But at the same time that's happening, there are encouraging things that are going on as well, and I think a lot of people are searching for, something deeper than just material success. Younger generations are starting to ask a lot of important spiritual questions. We've seen there's been a lot of publicity lately about in certain colleges and all, there's been like these outbreaks of revival and those kind of things. We're seeing a lot of those things. And I think when people live in a culture like we live in that's so crazy and there's so much stuff going on, I think that we're starting to see some of them lean back into some of the spiritual things for answers. People want solid, good answers to things. There's so much stuff out there. Right. And so I think that's encouraging.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Todd Dantzler. As most of you know, I'm a partner with Saunders Real Estate and have been a very active and working broker for over 42 years. I have fostered strong relationships throughout the state of Florida, working on properties ranging from agriculture and development land to multifamily, commercial, and industrial projects. If you have any real estate needs at all, please give me a call. I'd love to help. My direct line is 863-877-2846. Thank you. I want to talk about COVID for a second, because I do think COVID, I know it had an effect on our church and our attendance. Did it affect you guys? Did y'all have to shift how you did it? I know we started doing more videos, more live telecasts, whatever, podcasts, whatever it was back then. And we still do it. So it's forced us to deliver services different at First Presbyterian, and sounds like y'all are doing that too. But do you think y'all have rebounded from COVID? It sounds like you've grown phenomenal.
Yeah, we've rebounded. I feel like we've rebounded now. It took a little while.
Yep.
A couple of things played into that. One of the we broadcast our services prior to COVID. So when that happened, and when we did have to shut down for a little while, we were already broadcasting. Actually, we were able to help some other churches that were struggling with how to do that. We were able to do that, and so we declined in numbers for a while, and then when we came back, what was interesting is that because people were forced to watch the broadcast, a lot of people had never really watched the broadcast. They've been coming, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I can sit on my sofa and eat my pancakes and
sit in my pajamas and not brush my teeth and get a little religion." We
jokingly say it's the pancake preaching and pajama crowd. And so you have those people, and for a while, I think it's changed a little bit now, but for a while you had a lot of people that just decided this is what we're going to do, and so. But gradually they started coming back, and now they've come back, and it feels normal now. It doesn't feel like that's something that we can talk about, but it's not really having an effect on us now. And but it definitely had an effect on us. It changed things.
I think people are coming back and have come back because they need that personal touch. They need to shake your hand and say thank you, touch, hug the other people in the church, and to have that physical energy from each other that you don't get. It was certainly very easy to watch it on Facebook, on your computer, like you said, eating pancakes and sitting in your pajamas. But I think there is nothing like the energy that you get from other people, from the message, and certainly the energy I would think that comes from you and the other pastors up front is, a little more energy when you've got an audience or a congregation full of people.
Well, a huge part of our faith is community. Right. And, that's one of the things that we're not designed or created to live these Christian lives in isolation or alone.
Right.
And we're to live them with other people. And I think we need other people. And I think people sort of started, realizing that. And I guess, there are probably people with personalities that they're happy as they can be just to sit at home and watch it. Right. I'm not that guy. It drove me nuts. I wanted to be around all the people. I like to press the flesh and, there. But I think it makes a big difference because, and the scriptures even tell us that we're supposed to, not to forsake the assembling together of the righteous. We're supposed to gather together. That's the way God created his church. So I think that it makes a big difference.
So what does your congregation look like now that COVID is over? I know ours looks a little younger. We struggled for a while with COVID. I think we're kind of past that for the most part, but it seems like we have younger families, younger kids. Did y'all kind of see the same thing, or have you kind of rejuvenated across the board, maybe is a better word than grown?
I feel like it's been sort of across the board. We do see a lot of young families. We have an amazing children's ministry at Heartland, and we have we do a ministry called Awana, which is a non-denominational ministry on Wednesday nights, and we're ranked in the top 15 Awana clubs in the United States, and so we have lots of kids. We put a lot of resources and emphasis on students and children's ministry, and when you do that, it helps attract young families into the church.
That's where my stepdaughter goes. We talked about that before. My stepdaughter has got 3 children. They go there. She and her husband go there, and the kids are integrated into the youth programs. And
right, yeah. But it's been sort of a across the board growth.
I think you have to have a commitment to youth and children's programs to grow your church and keep sustaining members, because people die, they move, and you got to have that new crop of young people that are coming in to be part of it, and they're the ones that are yearning, that are learning, that are have that thirst for knowledge and have that thirst for Christ. So I think that's wonderful. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the things that historically we've seen, and this is a lot of my opinion here, and if some of my Southern Baptist friends are listening to this, they may get upset with me, but we have a lot of churches. A few years ago, they did a survey, and it was like 70% of Southern Baptists of our denomination churches were plateaued or declining. And if you go into a lot of those churches, they've sort of aged out. And what happens is they grow older, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, we all grow older, and but the congregations get a little older. But at some point, a lot of churches stop focusing. It becomes very inward, and they stop looking at the children, and they start looking at the youth, and it's sort of about us. And then all of a sudden, you realize that all of us are 80.
Yeah.
And now you can't attract a young family again. Right. And so I think that some of that has been, people have made intentional efforts to correct that. I know our denomination has gone in to revitalize churches and those kind of things. I'm sure all denominations probably do that.
Right.
And that's a great thing to see. But I'm 100% for putting resources and emphasis in kids ministry and young people, because we need to pour into them, because they are the church. They're the future of the church.
Do you see that thirst in the young people and the young families like you did back in the day, or is it harder to get them back in? And once you get them, is it easier to keep them?
The ones that are coming back and the ones that are there, we have an incredible engagement.
Right.
They seem, just interested. What's interesting? You have conversations sometimes, and with these young families that have children, and, they were brought up in church, and maybe they got away from it for a while, and now all of a sudden they have children, and they look around at the culture, and they're like, man, we need help.
Yes.
And we've got to go somewhere, and so we got to get back into church, and we're seeing that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I see that at our church as well, so it's good to see. How do we get more people back? A faith-promoting organization working with, a lot of Christian churches across the U.S. attributes the rise in church attendance to an increase on the focus of marriage and faith. Do you agree with that? I don't know where to go with that question, but it was a neat concept when I looked at it, so I apologize if it didn't make sense.
So
I'll give Eli credit for that one, even though he didn't do it.
So the marriage and faith, like focusing on marriage and faith to bring the people back in. I think that there is definitely a need to focus on relationships, to focus on marriage. In our culture today, I mean, we've got all kind of definitions of marriage and all kind of definitions of family floating around out there. In church, we need to bring people back to the biblical definitions of those things. And I think that's important. We just recently did a marriage conference. It was well attended. We constantly have these young families asking for help with marriage. Yes, I think that's important. But I think that in a more broad sense, in bringing people back, how do we reverse the trend that we're seeing? How do we do that?
Yes.
I think the answer is authentic faith lived out consistently. There's so much junk. That's
a great message.
Yeah.
Authentic faith lived out
consistently. People, I really believe that people today, regardless of their age, I think people are looking for what is real. There's so much stuff out there, and they want to see faith. They want to see a real faith that literally changes how people live and makes a difference in their life. They want to see something that's authentic.
Right.
They don't want to hear you just talk about it. They want to see it, and they want to see it lived out. And I think that they want to see people who actually do love other people. They want to see people who forgive other people, serve other people, who live with integrity, who live with character. I think people want to know, how do I do that? And they want to see other people that are doing that. And I think that people are attracted to that. In the culture that we live in with all the craziness, I think when people see something solid, and that they're attracted to that. And I think that's how we reverse the trend, is we actually live our faith. Again, we have a lot of nominal Christians. We have a lot of people out there that call themselves Christians, but their lives don't really look like that.
Right.
And so you have people that aren't Christians, and they're sort of looking in going, well, why would I want to be a Christian? My life's no different than their life. And so I think authentic faith lived out consistently is a big deal.
You've been very gracious with your time. I got a couple more questions. But how have modern political or societal divides impacted the church? You see the politics. And we touched about that a little bit earlier, and if it's something you don't want to answer, that's fine. But, how should the church be dealing with this? Is it the consistency I think is a great message that you just said in your last answer. But again, there's just so much pressure trying to divide us. You watch the news and it's like, God, just turn the news off and your life will be so much better. Watch a cooking show, watch how to plant a tree, or watch a bunch of kids playing sports or something.
Well, the political landscape obviously is one of those things that is always been a fine little line that churches have to walk along. You got to be careful, and now it seems like our political parties have sort of they're divided, and you've got wherever you fall and all this stuff, you've got people that almost, I see this a lot, people that almost feel like their faith and their politics are one and the same thing, and that's just not true.
Right.
And I think that the Bible calls us as followers of Christ to speak truth from the Word of God, not our opinion, not our ideas, but to speak truth and to speak it in love.
Right.
And so, I can disagree with someone and disagree with a position or what somebody's saying, but I should still do it compassionately, kindly, be willing to have dialogue.
Open-mindedly.
To have a conversation with someone.
Right.
Be willing. And if we walk away and we still disagree, we can agree to disagree and we can still be friends. But it seems like the political environment we're in today is just mean-spirited, and we see it on both sides of the aisle. We see it. We see it in the church. There's a lot of. I hate to say this, but I told my church the other day, I don't want us to be identified with being mean Christians.
Right.
There are a lot, and then you get a political party that identifies, okay, this one's Christian, this one's not. I think that starts to get dangerous. I think we, as Christians, we should be focused on what God says and on the gospel. That's what we should be focused on.
Right.
So.
We started off talking about you being mayor. Do you miss that side of politics, the elected side? How long did you do it? How long were you mayor? Was that a good experience for you?
It was a good experience, and it was an interesting experience. I served a 3-year term as a city commissioner, and one of those years I served as mayor.
Okay.
And it was in Fort Meade, Florida. It was a very small town. It was a great experience. It was a great learning experience. I mean, obviously, when you serve in a capacity like that, you see another side of things, see things in a different way, and you learn and you grow. It was fun, but it wasn't for me. That's not something I would want to stay in.
I did my 8 years, and I was thankful for term limits.
Yes.
I didn't know if I was before I started, but when I finished, I was glad.
Yeah.
And I do think that everyone should, not everyone should do it or can do it, but those that can should at least try and run your community, run your city, run your county, run your state if you have the ability to do that. So I do think that's important. My last question, and it came to me as we're talking, what does your Sunday look like after church? What do you do when you finish and you go, wow, what a great Sunday, what a great service, what a great time I had with my people? It's
very practical kind of a thing, I guess. We have 3 services on Sunday.
Okay.
And we have a couple thousand, say anywhere from 1,700 to 2,000 people on the weekends,
right,
all the places and running around. You do 3 sermons, and they're all the same. It's the same thing. And it's interesting because I love it. I really enjoy it. And I get excited about getting up speaking. I go up and I speak and I do my thing. And then usually what happens, you said, what does it look like? Usually what happens is after church, my wife and I will go to lunch with someone.
Right.
It might be someone from the church. Maybe it's our family. It's someone. We'll go to lunch with someone. The most interesting thing, and I've talked about this with her a lot, somewhere around during lunch or around 1:30 or 2 o'clock, somewhere around there, it literally feels like I'm an inflated tire and someone has just released the valve. And I mean, I feel like somebody has beat me up. Right. And so we go home, and usually my wife will take a nap. She will literally lay down and go get in the bed and take a nap. And I will usually sit in a recliner. And if it's football season, I'll start watching a football game, or I like golf, so I'll watch golf and snooze in and out of that and just relax. We don't have Sunday evening services.
Okay.
So, and then, we just kind of relax through the evening and get ready for the next week. But it just wears me. It just literally wears me out.
Does your wife ever preach, or is she said,
no,
Ed, that's your job?
We're Southern Baptist, and
Okay.
that, so she would not do that in our church.
One question Eli had, and I don't have it down. He asked, was it church notes or sermon notes? What was the word you used, Eli?
Oh, I asked what your thoughts were on sermon notes. A lot of churches now, when you walk in, give you notes with all the points of the sermon and the verses that they're using. People have different opinions on that.
Well, so for a lot of years, we actually used sermon notes. We would hand out a sheet of paper, usually half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and we'd have the outline with fill in the blank kind of things and sermon notes. We stopped doing that, but we did this little informal observance or survey or whatever you want to call it. We watched what was taking place, and we noticed that probably 80% of those things were ending up they were ending up in the trash can at the end of the service, even the ones that were completed. People would throw them away. So we now use an app. It's called the Church Center app. And so all of our notes are on the app. And so when we get up before our services, we always have someone come up, we have someone welcome, and we make a couple of announcements, and we will tell everyone, hey, the best place to get information, the best place to find out, matter of fact, the best place you can go today to follow our service is the Church Center app. So you open the app, and it's there on the phone instead of paper.
Eli, do you have any other questions? I'm going to let Ed go. He's been very gracious, like I said, and we've had him a little over an hour now.
I think that was great.
And I can't thank you enough for being a spiritual leader in our community. There obviously was a very big thirst for your church, for the word that you bring, for your family, the sacrifice that they made in going to the Carolinas with you back when you started. And, I think it's worked out great for them, I'm assuming. But you've done a wonderful job in our community, and I'm glad you've come back to plant your seed, to plant your church here in Winter Haven. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I feel like I've spent an hour with you here, and I know you a lot better than I did even going in. So thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. And it's always great to talk about these things. You talk about things like this for me in bits and pieces, but you don't really sit down and have too many conversations, and it reminds me of a lot of good things when I talk about these things. So.
Well, if you're looking for a church home, Heartland's always looking for more folks. Any church will take anybody just about. Yep. And if Heartland isn't for you, try another one.
Right.
Just find one that fits your personality, fits your family, fits your style, fits your worship style, and try and get back into it. I know that I'd gotten lazy during COVID and I wasn't eating pancakes, but I was in my gym shorts a lot. So it's been an effort for me to kind of get back into the real life, but I'm trying better. And I do thank you for coming on, Ed, and for what you do and what your family does for our community.
Thanks a lot.
And if you like this episode of Todd's podcast, I hope you'll turn in next time, and have a good day. Thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This has been your host, Todd Dantzler. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to rate, review, follow, and subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions for me, suggestions for future guests, or are interested in sponsorship opportunities for our podcast, please just fill out the contact form on my website, todddantzler.com. I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback, and please take care.